Welcome to the How to DIY Central Heating video. Our first project is going to be draining down a central heating boiler. With most central heating projects, it will be necessary to drain down the central heating system. Locate the drain-off valve on the boiler, usually situated at the lowest point. Attach a length of hose and loosen the valve to drain down. Open the air vent on the highest radiator in your central heating system. The air intake will speed up the drain down process. Fitting an extra radiator. Measure up the size of the room where the radiator is to be fitted. A good plumber's merchant or DIY store will recommend a suitable radiator size. Locate the pipework near to where the radiator is to be fitted. Lift a floorboard and cut across it in the middle of the joist. Remove the floorboard. Now, feel the pipes. The warmest of the two pipes will be the flow. In the majority of cases, the flow should always be piped to the left-hand side of the radiator, the right-hand pipe being known as the return. Label the flow. Now's the time to drain down your central heating system and isolate the electricity supply. Transfer the center of the fixing brackets onto the top of the radiator. These can then be easily marked onto the wall. Mark the horizontal or top of the radiator across this vertical mark. Now square this to the other mark with a spirit level. These marks now become the top of the fixing brackets. Mark the positions to be drilled and plugged. Now fix these to the wall. In this example, we're fitting a thermostatic radiator valve. These are generally fitted to the flow, that is, the left-hand side of the radiator. Apply a quantity of PTFE tape around the external thread, making sure it's wound in the opposite direction to the thread. Tighten the valve into the radiator. There are several types of valve fixing. This particular valve needs a spanner. Ensure the valve is tightened up as much as possible. On the other end of the radiator, a standard valve will be fitted. This valve needs an Allen key to be tightened. Again, make sure a good quantity of PTFE tape is used. Now, hang the radiator onto the brackets and check that it's level. Insert a small length of pipe into the valve in order to mark where the floorboard needs to be drilled. Remove the radiator from the wall and drill the hole. The joists will need to be cut in order for the pipes to run up to the radiator. Do not cut away any more of the joist than is absolutely necessary, but remember to trim an extra few millimeters to allow for lagging at the end. Mark the pipe holding the T-fitting next to it. A section will have to be removed to accommodate the fitting. Here we're using a pipe slice, which gives a good clean straight cut. A hacksaw can be used, but the rough edges will need to be cleaned up. Hold the pipe firmly and cut out the section required. This is the removed section that will be replaced by the fitting. Apply flux to the pipe and fitting. The flux stops the metal oxidizing when heat is applied for soldering. Fix the fitting and pipes together. Cut a length of pipe to suit. You'll encounter situations where standard angles are not suitable, so you will need to bend the pipe. In this example, we're going to use a pipe bending spring. Insert the spring into the pipe. Gradually bend the desired radius over your knee. Remove the spring and test. Mark the pipe and cut as necessary. Apply flux to the pipe and fitting, and now connect together. For ease, remove the valve to be piped up. Bend a 90-degree angle into the pipe. This is required to raise the pipework above the floorboards. Always try to run your pipework along the straightest route. Avoid too many elbows, as this can restrict the efficiency of the system. When you're bending pipework, try often, as it can take some time to get it exactly right. Trim the pipe to length as required. Varying angles can be bent into one length of pipe if you need to. Mark and trim the pipes to size. Finally, flux all the remainder of the joints and assemble ready to solder. Remove the nut and olive from the radiator fitting and put these onto the copper pipe. This type of fitting requires a sealing paste before assembly and tightening. Spread the paste over the pipe and olive. The part of the fitting which attaches to the radiator also requires an amount of paste. Reassemble the valve and hand tighten. Now it's time to solder all the fittings. Take care that no electric cables or fittings are nearby. Generally, when solder drips from the bottom of the fitting, this is a good indication that the joint is full of solder, but it will be worth visually checking that this is the case. Leave the pipework to cool and wipe it down with a damp cloth. Now, tighten the compression fitting with adjustable grips. The flow supply feed is now complete, and you follow the same procedure to pipe up the return. It will be worthwhile to insulate the pipes where they pass through joists. This will help stop creaking and knocking noises. Here we're using air felt lagging, which can be obtained from merchants or DIY stores. Now replace the floorboards. It's advisable to drill and screw the boards for easy access. Fill the central heating system back up, remembering to bleed the air from your radiators, starting with downstairs first. And lastly, check for any leaks. Fitting a thermostatic radiator valve. A thermostatic radiator valve can be fitted to most of your radiators. This will give you individual temperature control for each room, which can result in lower fuel bills. First then, drain the central heating system and open the valve on the radiator. To remove the valve, 2 spanners will be needed. One to steady the valve, one to undo the tail. This avoids any unnecessary strain on the valve or pipework. Always use a dust sheet, as there's usually a bit of water left in the pipework. Bear in mind that some thermostatic radiator valves are not compatible to the radiator valve tails. If this is the case, it will have to be removed. Remove all the components. Check to see if it fits on the flow or return. Assemble the valve and tail. Decide which way fitting is preferred, following the manufacturer's guidelines. You will need to wrap PTFE tape around the thread of the fitting. A good quantity will be required, as this will help to make a watertight seal. Now fit and tighten as before. Apply some sealing paste to both threads on the valve. Reassemble, and finally tighten up with spanners. Use the second pair to steady any movement or prevent any strain to the valve or pipework. Secure the head of the valve and refer to manufacturer's guidelines on temperature control. Replacing a radiator. There are various reasons for replacing a radiator. For example, damage, rusting, changing from a single to a double, and so on. Radiators can be changed without draining down the system. Always remember, thermostatic radiator valves will need to have the sealing off cap fitted to enable complete isolation. Turn off both the flow and return valves. Before removing the old radiator, measure it up so as to purchase the correct replacement size, eliminating the need to alter your pipework. Now, with 2 pairs of grips, loosen the valve and tail. Place a bowl underneath and open the air vents. This will force the water out of the radiator. After the water has drained, place some tissue in the valves. This will stop any drips going onto the carpet. Turn the radiator upside down to stop any water spillage. Some tails are available which have already been coated with a sealant. These will not require an application of PTFE tape. If you do not have these pre-coated tails, use the PTFE tape as we mentioned earlier. Fix these tails into the radiator as before. Place the new radiator onto the brackets. Apply some sealing paste to the valves and then tighten up. Now, remove the thermostatic radiator valve sealing off cap and refit the thermostatic radiator valve. Reopen the valves and bleed off the air. This process should never be done with the central heating pump on. All you'll do is pump air into the system. Fault finding. One of the most common causes of your central heating system not working is when the pump has not been used for some time, for example, throughout the summer months. Remove the center screw. Manually turn the pump with a screwdriver. Replace the cover and test. If this process fails to work, the pump will probably need replacing. When bleeding air from your central heating system after any alterations, always start to bleed air from the lowest radiator, finishing with the highest, and never have the pump running while carrying out this procedure. If you find that you're having to bleed air from your radiators on a frequent basis, you may be experiencing one of two possible problems. Firstly, your heating system could be producing hydrogen, which will be produced from a corroding radiator. This can be controlled by corrosion-proofing your system. This is a liquid treatment that is added to your central heating header tank. Follow the manufacturer's instructions. Secondly, over-pumping can occur by having your heating pump set too high. Reduce the speed setting until the problem is controlled.